Eric, how's it going, man?
It's going real good, Sam. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for making the trek all this way across Los Angeles, the Valley.
Yeah, man. And you know what? This is very, very cool. Not, like, how did you come up with the name?
So fancy, isn't it? I'm a fancy guy, as you can tell.
I wouldn't choose fancy as the word, man, but there's definitely a cool fact. In fact, I'm looking around, and I got to step up my game at home because, my office at home is like a doctor's office, man. And yours, this is cool. It kind of took me back to my childhood, man, like the baseball cards.
Yeah, you don't have a Bo Jackson autograph card in your office?
I had a bunch. I didn't have those, but I had some really cool cards.
You don't have a Ken Griffey rookie card?
No.
All of them?
Nope.
PSA 10?
No. I remember the Bo Jackson with the shoulder pads and the baseball bat. Remember that one?
It's right up there on the wall. Looking on the far left there.
I did not catch that, man.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is,
Yep.
man.
Exactly. You remember? See, we're from the same era, man. That's why we get each other. Well, I am a serious professional, as are you, but I am a big kid at heart. Maybe I have an extended adolescence. Who knows?
And you know what? You're bringing it out in me, man. So important. I walked in and I was like, my place needs to look something like this, man.
This is my office / man cave / library. I used to have wall-to-wall books in here, and then my wife talked me into like paring it down. Like when I say wall-to-wall, like this is all bookcases, like ceiling to floor. Because I don't know, you might know this. Well, let me introduce you to everybody, all the people out there in the fine YouTube world. This is my good friend and colleague Eric Avalos. He is with Monarch Title, but we're just chatting as friends today. He's a title rep. So he also works in the real estate industry. Those of you that aren't familiar with me, if you happen to not know me and you happen upon my podcast here, I'm Sam Andrus, host of the Terra Firma podcast with Sam Andrus. Convenient. And I'm also a real estate professional. I'm a real estate and mortgage broker here in Southern California, primarily Los Angeles. So yeah, Eric, we'll loop back to what we were talking about here. So
no, I'd love it. And this is when I say, I love what I do for a living, right? I think this is why. It's because, I met you years ago and we're not only colleagues and business associates, but we're also friends, man. And that is such a cool gig, man.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that like totally keep professional and friends like separate, and that's fine. Everybody's got their different personality, different styles. It's funny. I think we met the first time at a mutual friend's house at a poker night. Did we not? It was a bunch of realtors and loan officers, man, and the title guy in the room.
Yeah, and we were opposites because you were aggressive, man. I mean, you were going in hard on some of those hands, and I'm just sitting back there going, I'm gonna wait for some good cards, man.
Scared money don't make money. Come on, bro.
True.
Come on, bro.
True,
no,
true.
exactly.
And to go back to what you were talking about, I think what's nice, again, why I love what I do is it's some people, and we can pick and choose who we keep it professional with and who we who we go a little deeper with, and I understand why some people just don't cross that line, right? There's definitely some fallbacks that can come with mixing the two. So yeah,
absolutely, man. I tend to blur those lines though, so you know me, Eric. We won't go into that too much, but
thanks for the coffee, dude. Check this out, man.
Yes, we are not sponsored by Ember, but Ember, if you're out there, I would love a Ember warming mug sponsorship.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to pick some up, man, because it's got this little what is it, stove down here or underneath?
Well, yeah, it's a little heating filament in there. So it's like, here's the thing, right? I'm a coffee drinker. You're a coffee drinker. You ever notice how like you get a pot with kids? You pour a fresh pot, you put a pot of coffee on, you pour a fresh cup, fresh mug. It's a cold mug usually, right? And so you turn around, you do a few things with your kid, and then 5 minutes later you go back, your coffee's like not hot anymore. You're like, what the?
Bro, I'm a total sexist, man. I don't do a bunch of stuff with the kids at the house.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, hey, you said that, not me, bro.
No, I'm not. But usually, you know what? My morning is like, I have a routine, right? Like I'm a creature of habit, and I think why my success comes from a template that I use every day, right? And so I try not to let the kids and stuff around the house get in the way of that template, of that routine, right, that I have for my day. So, but I get it, man. Sometimes the coffee goes cold when Sam calls me and says, "Oh, we got a problem here. We got to fix it." And I'm like, "Oh,
exactly.
all right,
I know."
All right,
pull you away from things.
But this
solves the problem. There's a solution for everything these days, man, and a problem for every solution too.
Yeah. But
No, but seriously, so jumping back to when we met too, so we're at this poker party, and the reason, to let everybody out there know, so there's a gazillion title reps. There's kind of like, it's kind of like loan officers and realtors, right? Everybody thinks they are one or knows one, but really, I think in all of our industry, whether it's escrow, title, loan, realtor, whatever it is, 20% of the people that are licensed or employed in those tasks or those professional roles, 20% of them really do the business for the most part. I think a lot of people, maybe not as much in title, maybe there's limited reps because you're very much tied to.
No, I think that rule applies pretty much. Yeah.
And then like half the people are trying to do it, and then like another 25 are kind of somewhere in between, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Don't be offended out there, okay? Don't cry and try to cancel me, you little pansies.
You know what? And the reasons why some people come in and they, it's not what they think. Some people are in the game and they do very, very well. I mean, they just kill it, right? And then they get to a point where they've made so much money, they've invested well, they've done well, and then they don't have to, work so hard anymore, right? So I try not to be judgmental about it. You know what I mean?
There's so many ways to get it done, like professionally in real estate and entitled to, like you follow a script, like you follow a daily plan, right? That's probably the most conventional, and probably a lot of people historically that's tried and true success, right? I'm guessing if I walked into a title office, it'd be similar to like a real estate brokerage, right? It's like, hey, a local realtor friend of mine, colleague, broke it down to me. And he's like, Sam, we're in the business of talking to homeowners and getting to know homeowners, and anything else, you're kidding yourself. And I was like, wow, okay. This guy is really successful. So his rule of thumb is you need to be talking with 15 to 20 homeowners, okay? 15 to 20 homeowners a day. And it doesn't mean you're like trying to force them to sell their home, obviously, but building relationships, adding value, doing things, right? And so for you, it's probably talking to 15 to 20 loan officers or realtors a day, right? Building those relationships, adding value, right? And everything else is just kind of like on the periphery.
I think he's spot on. But I think, I think that, that is what you want to do, right? Is talk to homeowners. But the way that you get there, right? I think it's got to meet your personality. It's got to fit your personality, the way that you get to talk to people about real estate or about title. And again, that's the cool thing about what we do, right? You don't necessarily need to be on the phone calling people that don't know you, trying to get them. And that works for some people whose personality it fits, right? There's different ways to go about doing it, right? And I think
the thing is, there's examples of extreme success with every path, right? Like somebody who's a cold caller, somebody who's a door knocker, somebody who's an open house king, somebody who's a like marketing mailing guru dynamo, right? Online SEO, and some people do a blend of all of those, right? But a lot of them, but like here's the thing though, right? It's like a new person into any industry, you can tell them like this is the blueprint, or you can say this is my blueprint, or these are the templates you could choose. Find the one that fits you, because it has to fit your personality, right? I'm more relational. I rely heavily on referrals and my network. I do some advertising. I do give to charity. I do event sponsored things. But at the end of the day, I try to put myself in spaces and places. Like how I rhyme that right there? Spaces and places. Sorry, I'm just trying to be professional here. Where I can come into contact and meet people, right? And, some people will even say, hey, if you're in the business of real estate, you need to have rich people in your network. Like that's what it comes down to. And I don't, I'll serve anybody on any size or anything. Like at the end of the day, what makes me really happy, yes, I love large commission checks. That's obvious. Mm-hmm. But what I really love is the getting there, right? So like in the process, if I can help somebody, like I think I'll keep it generic, but I think you referred somebody to me and it was like a very, it was like living with an elderly family member and like was going to be there longer term, and the elderly family member wanted to like allow this person to like build something, and it was like that was not a deal where there was much money involved. Like it wasn't a big commission for me, but the fact to like you made the connection to me. And like I, because it was a small thing, you thought I could help him out, and I did, and he did it. And I think they got the second home built, right?
Correct.
So it's like, and like that's somebody who they would never have an option of living in a house like that in LA, most likely, So it's a really cool thing. Like those are smaller examples. It was a big deal in those people's lives, Correct. And so just to see that from start to finish, to make it across the finish line, that's always fun, right? Or people just don't know what their options are, and you inform them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to when that person told you that their idea of how to be successful in real estate, you know, is to know and meet rich people. There's something to that. If you're trying to tap into, you know, the rich people market, right?
Yeah, the luxury market. Yeah,
correct. If
yeah.
you want to go into that market, then yes, you're gonna have to know rich people, because rich people are those that own the luxury
and
market,
rich is
right?
all relative, right? I mean, there's, you know, wealthy, but, you know, people of means tend to have. It doesn't. I mean, you could own a janitorial company and you're just killing it, and you want to invest in rental properties, right? So people that are entrepreneurial, that have assets, that value owning assets, those are the types of people we want to be in a relationship with.
But you don't need to know rich people to be extremely successful in real estate. That
True.
is 100% inaccurate. But if you want to go into the luxury market in real estate, you need to know some rich people, right?
Exactly.
So I think they were a little bit off maybe in what they were trying to message over to you. But yeah, I think the process of finding out which activities, which markets, which way you want to go about having conversations with people about real estate, I think that's when you look back on your career, that's the best time in your career, is how you went about figuring it out.
Yep.
Now
exactly.
I meet, you know, so many professionals, and I'm sure it's like this for, you know, every career, like the first, you know, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, depending on the career that you choose, you know, is that figuring out period. And I get to see it all the time. And I just think to myself, like, when I meet new agents, I just think, just hang in there. Just keep trying to figure out, but just hang in there.
That's the hardest part for most of them.
Yeah, man, it is
hanging in there, and knowing what to do, because let's be honest, a lot of sales, a lot of entrepreneurial related endeavors, right? Where you're starting a business. I mean, I've had clients that like are opening up a franchise, and you think, wow, that's really cookie cutter, because, you know, your marketing, your branding, your company, your product, all that stuff's decided for you. You're just buying into that, right? But then it might take 6, 8, 10, 9, 12, 15 months to get your store built out, to do all that, to even make a sale, right? So they're stressing in the meantime, like they're like hoping that it's going to work out, you know, but there's no guarantee, you know, even though they've been shown the numbers or whatever it may be. I think that's the hardest part about our job, is there's nobody that's going to tell you what to do for the most part. They'll set expectations, right? Like my clients have expectations of me. You know, your agents that you're serving have expectations of you. We'll get into what title insurance is a little bit, just to illuminate people the mystery of what title insurance is. Because it is a mystery to a lot of people. But circling back on the different ways, one of the things I love, appreciate, and respect about you the most is, so after we met at that mutual friends poker night, which was a lot of fun. I can't believe that was probably like 5 years ago. Crazy.
I think you were already wearing nice watches at the time.
Oh yeah, I was already
looking at you going, dude, this guy's watching. I didn't say anything.
I was already firmly entrenched, bro. It's part of the poker game. I love drinking coffee on my podcast. Sorry,
That does stay warm.
I'm really going after that sponsorship, Ember. So
Man, my wife can drink that like boiling, and my dad used to drink it boiling. I'm like,
yeah.
And I asked her one day, I said, "How do you drink it like that, man?" Because
scalding, yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm like,
Yeah, this keeps it like, it's like 150, so it cools it off a little bit from like the brewed temperature, but it won't get cold on you.
No, and it's not boiling hot, right?
Right.
But
It's like nice.
she can drink it, and then she helped me understand it, because she goes, you know that salsa that you put on your food? I said, yeah. You know how spicy that is to me, and but you love it, and the spicier it is, the more you love it. I was like, well, it's kind of the same thing. I was like, I get.
You like that, dude? I don't know if that was a joke or not, but
no, it wasn't a joke.
It
but
felt right though. I wanted to do a
She
little.
helped me understand how she could enjoy something so hot the same way that I could enjoy something so
Yeah.
spicy, right? And I was like,
Everybody's
okay,
everybody's tolerances are different. Even my son, man, God, the kid's like gonna be 4 here, and like he'll demand drinking coffee. I'm like, dude, it's too hot for you right now, and he insists, and it's like, all right, let me try to cool it down real quick a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But so getting back, the thing I loved about you, talk about different ways and getting it done. So we met at that poker night, and we I don't even know if we talked. I don't even know if we exchanged numbers, bro. I don't know if we did, but I think I had an open house like the next day or the following week, and on a new listing, one of my great clients that was we were putting this flip on the market, and it was really nicely done, small Spanish cottage style home.
Alhambra adjacent.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that, right on the border,
yeah,
man.
yeah, nice. And boy, that area is just blown up. And so you took the initiative to come out, meet me at the listing, hang out. I've never had a title rep do that, and I've worked with other good title reps for different reasons, but the fact that you showed that personal touch, that like face to face, that's what I'm about, like relationship aspect of it, right?
Right.
We don't necessarily have to be best friends, but I value relationship. I value, the fact that like you took an interest in the listing, and I feel like a lot of times in today's email, digital, instant messaging, that personalized relational aspects it's gone, in a lot of ways. So I think people like myself and like yourself that really value that, we stand out, because there's fewer people that put value on doing that type of thing. I think for the most part.
Yeah. And listen, the digital space it is definitely leading the way right now.
Yeah.
As far as business and
for reach, I mean, obviously you can only appear in so many places physically at one time. Right.
But I think our business is still local.
Right.
I do think
and personal, right?
And personal.
Yeah. So it's a both and, right? It's like, yes, you need to be out there for reach. That's part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is I just enjoy it, like I enjoy figuring out how to do a podcast and like chatting about stuff, but also gives me some reach, gives me a chance to hear from colleagues and professionals,
exchange ideas, and
exactly.
get to know, somebody a little bit more rather than just, a potential facade that they put up on
100%.
on social media or short videos and stuff
100%.
like that. This is a cool format here, the long format. But yeah, to get back to it, I've in business, when I started in this, I had no idea and what sales is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have these ideas of what a salesperson is, right? And I just knew that I didn't want, when I got in, I didn't want to be begging for a 2 or 3% raise.
For sure.
In the position that I was in. I was already in title, but it wasn't a sales position. It wasn't anything that was tied to a variable, right?
Right.
And so when I did finally get a chance at sales, and I think I was asking for close to a year, to that they would allow me to go out in the sales field, I didn't know what I was getting into. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So I didn't know what sales was,
Yeah.
right? But to me, what I always, when I saw somebody or I met somebody and there was something about that person that said, yeah, I need to know more. I want to get to know that person.
Yeah.
Then I would show up, right?
Yep.
Then I would pursue that person, right?
Sure.
And I think the quickest way to doing business with somebody is in person.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
In person. That's the quickest way to doing business with somebody now. So,
Especially because the digital and online marketing aspect, we're all bombarded with in our industry. We're all bombarded with the next product and service and lead generation and yada 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 yada. Right. And I get emails from title reps all the time.
oh, I can't imagine.
But like,
not just title rep, but
yeah,
just
a bombarded. Yeah. But and that's not bad. But then to later personal connection, I'm gonna go with you, a guy who comes to my property, shows an interest, who presents to me what his value proposition is as far as like being somebody that's like my team. A lot of the most successful agents have a team. They have like recommended lenders because they may or may not be the cheapest. That doesn't really even apply. But as far as service and outcomes, that's what we're looking for our clients, right? So we want a lender that that will close and make it as pain-free as possible. Do the due diligence up front. We want a title rep like yourself at Monarch who understands that whatever you can preemptively tell us about the property and title and any issues with title and how the ownership is being held, that if we can clear that up, and there's been at least a couple times I remember recently where you've told me, hey, here's the issue, Sam. I get more information for me prior to me listing a property. You ran up the flagpole, so you're like able to totally inform me, so then I can inform my sellers, because I'm not a title professional, right? I know how to look up a title report. I know how to read title for the most part, but I'm not versed in all the little idiosyncrasies that can emerge. Where you guys and your team, you've seen everything amongst yourselves, right? Or you've seen a lot of it, right? So you know the potential red flags. A lot of times there could be an issue on title that the sellers lived there 20, 30 years, 40 years.
They don't know.
They have no clue. There was one that happened. I listed a property, this elderly couple. God bless them, and their son just passed away as well. God bless Rick and the Kitamura family. they they wanted me to list their house. They wanted to downsize, all normal stuff. So we go run title, and this might have been before we were working together, though, by the way. And there's a tax lien on it. Now, this guy is like a Korean War veteran. He's like buttoned up. The guy like probably paid cash for everything his whole life, like that generation, right? So it turns out that, you know, there are multiple people. I learned a lesson that the government will just do a search in an area, and if they see a name pop up on a property, they'll just throw a tax lien, an IRS tax lien on it, and then the burden is on the homeowner to clear it up, basically. So they've been sitting on there for years, and it was literally just a solution was send us his social security number, and then they looked at the social security number of the one on the tax lien. They didn't match up, got it cleared, got it kicked off.
Yeah, and those are
You've seen that commonly, probably.
That's every day.
Yeah,
every day, right? The county just has a database filled with tax liens,
a bunch of John Smiths. They're like, let's put it on all the John Smiths, and then
correct.
You know, yeah.
And then title needs to determine whether, you know, the liens that are recorded that, you know, has the a name on it that is the same name as your property owner.
Right.
You know, we need to confirm whether it's the same person or not. And we do that using,
right,
you know, the information that they send us that we ask for, and we go, no, it's not him. We're good.
Yeah.
Cleared. Good. Or yes, there's a match here, right? This is definitely our homeowner. And there have been situations where, you know, the homeowner will say, well, you know, I had no idea, right? Or
and they may genuinely not have had an idea.
yeah, there have been situations where they just did not know, right?
Sure.
Or sometimes they it was somebody who was on title before that's no longer on title. You know, well, yeah, you know, their liens don't go away just because they did a deed to you, right?
Yeah.
So
see, I didn't know that either, but yeah, it makes sense though. Yeah.
Unless there was title insurance when they transferred the property, but a lot of times people transfer their title without title insurance, and the liens that that person had, you know, they still need to be, you know, taken care of. So you know, but it's I think in every profession you have to, I think one of the important things, again, going back to showing up, is that, you know, when most of the time things get cleared up, and a lot of the work that we do is on the back end with the escrows and, you know, the stuff that they submit to us. But
well, and 99% of it is stuff that sellers and buyers, our clients, right? The end consumer, they'll never even see or know about, unless there's some follow-up documentation that's needed.
But when it does happen, you know, you want a professional, and again, in every profession, not just in title, you want a professional that's going to show up, that's going to be there, right? And not.
And you want a solutions person, like I'll always talk about you know, the top few, I should say, things that I'm responsible for to clients are, one, information and education, right? Informing you as a real estate professional of these are your options, right? Sometimes that may mean selling your property isn't the best option, even if it's the best option for me getting a closed sale. And I truly believe that. Like, I believe in advising people and informing them to the best of my professional knowledge and their situation on what their options are. Now, clients make the ultimate decision, right? So like, there may be a property that a client wants to list, and I personally be like, man, internally, I'm like, man, I would keep this and keep it as a rental if this was my property, right? And a lot of times I've told a client that, you know, and they're like, hey, Sam, we understand, but we are not in the business of wanting to be landlords. We don't want to deal with it. And, you know, when you look at recently in California, you can't blame them, because landlords got the short end of it.
Here we go.
We're not. Don't worry, I'm not going to rope you into politics here, Eric.
Okay.
But landlords got the. It goes without saying where like people could just stay in their places and not pay rent for the most part, like unchecked, and then like, but landlords still have to pay property taxes, utilities, upkeep, all that stuff. It's like, so I have a tenant who's owes $80,000 in back rent for the last 2 years, but I have to be there in 24 hours to repair their air conditioner. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, where you're like, something didn't get thought through too much. So all I have to say is, now I understand in a new way when a client says, yeah, I don't want to be involved in property management or any of that, because you do open yourself to some legal stuff and other things too when you are dealing with the public and housing laws and all.
You know, I've been a tenant, right?
Yeah.
And then I went into home ownership, and now, you know, we're on the, you know, moving into the landlord side,
sure,
right? And so you see all the different perspectives, you know, a tenant, homeowner, and the landlord, right? And
Yep.
so, yeah, I
And
mean,
what's crazy about that? Tell me.
there are some things where you go, dang, that's not okay,
Yeah.
by the landlord, and then you go, dang, that's not okay by the tenant.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But definitely, we are in a tenant-friendly,
This is
not only state but city.
city. Yeah.
Jeez, man,
To the extreme, in my opinion.
To the extreme, yes, yes.
But and that's not to say I think that rents are. I agree, rents are kind of crazy, but there's economic forces that dictate that, and I won't get on my soapbox here. But honestly, a lot of people have no business living in Los Angeles. They probably, if they were looking for a better way of life, need to move to different areas. And people cry about that, but a lot of, like, my great grandfather came here, well, on one side of my family, from Sweden when there was a famine and economic depression and famine. And it was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to America, but there's no guarantees. There was no handout. They got on a boat with very little in their pocket. I even have the manifest from the ships in New York.
Okay.
I got a copy of it, right? And so you're looking at that and you're going, and people on the ship they were on that came over, I think it was like almost 3 months, 2.5, 3 months sailing on a ship. A lot of stuff could have happened. There's no GPS on these ships back then, right? And people died on the boat coming over, right? So there's like no guarantees. And I'm not asking for, it's not like a sob story. Everybody in our history somebody always has it worse. Somebody's always had it worse or more risky or whatnot. But the reality is people had to move. Then his son, my grandfather, left Minnesota as a young boy and moved to LA when LA wasn't what it is today. We're talking like the 1930s. He came out here,
Wow,
right? Ended up working for Lockheed. So I say all that to say, like, there seems to be, at least in LA, a lot of people are like, I'm pissed off. I can't afford to live on the West Side. It's like, well, everybody wants to live there. So you probably have to like find a place where there's opportunity, like Austin or, Utah's big, or Idaho, or these places. And it's like, well, I don't want to go there. Okay. Well then, sorry, you're probably going to spend $5,000 a month for your,
but there are a lot of people going there.
There are, but there's a lot that are
people
not,
going
though. There's a lot of people that would rather just complain about not being able to live on the West Side, or afford, a posh place in Pasadena or something like that, but my point is just not, people have to make their own decisions, of course, but like generationally, I think prior generations were more like, I'll do what I got to do to make the best life possible for my family. If that means moving, uprooting, that's what we're going to do. And more of them are doing for different reasons today. I think some of it is cost, but some of it's just the livability of LA.
For the most part, I'm a pretty optimist when it comes to people being able to, to buy here. I think the dream is alive and well. Now it's not easy.
No,
it's
for sure.
not easy, right? Sure. And so what's
and it's not fair. Like, let's be honest. The people that are affording to buy here are people that have either A, inherited money, B, are really good with their money and have saved aggressively, invested wisely, whatever it may be, or C, are really high earners, or a combination of all those, right? I think the challenge is there's no way somebody a dual income on minimum wage in LA, you're never going to buy a home unless you get some sort of outside help. You're just not. It's not going to happen. So, and I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I'm not even sure, maybe in the 60s and 70s, a couple earning minimum wage, but probably not even then could you on minimum wage buy a house. You know what I mean? I'd have to look up the data on that, but
I don't know that you should,
right?
Be able to buy a house on minimum wage, right? Because if I think there needs to be some incentive, to if you're on minimum wage, right?
Which you're probably in a low skill position where pretty much most able-bodied people could perform the task.
Well,
for the most part,
but
cashier,
but that doesn't mean that a minimum wage income should not result in a nice place to live. And
correct,
now that I'm going into the landlord space, I think to myself, that's the goal, is to provide a nice place for somebody to live, right?
100%.
But home ownership, well, I think a minimum wage income isn't going to net you the ability to own a home, right? And I'm not sure that it should.
Correct. I don't think those jobs were ever, man, I have to look the data up, maybe in the 60s and 70s on minimum wage, although minimum wage is much lower than, I doubt you could buy a home, maybe a starter home. But that's just not the case now with population growth and increased urbanization and people, it's becoming more and more urban dense, right? But at the end of the day, like, what I tell people is, yeah, I think somebody who works 40 hours a week, even if it's a minimum wage job, which now is what, like $20 an hour in LA, 22 in some place, I don't know. It's a lot more than it was. It's a lot more than the federal minimum wage.
Right.
But like, I think, yeah, you should be able to afford a place to live. The problem is, as I see it, I mean, you can disagree, is what's nice and what's necessary. That's like fluid. Like a lot of people have a different, like, what I tell people is like, if you're on a minimum wage job or close to it and you're bitching about, the cost of things, well, first of all, some people, you talk to them, it's like, well, they only want to live in these 3 areas, right? So they're not flexible on that. And then they got to have a place that has X, Y, Z. And it's like, okay. And then you have an Apple TV subscription. You've got an Amazon Prime subscription. You've got Netflix. You've got Disney Plus. You've got all these apps and all these gadgets that you're subscribing. Oh, and you get a new iPhone every year just because Verizon tells you it goes on your monthly bill. Don't worry. You don't have to give us any money up front. We just increase your payment by $9 a month. And then you go to Starbucks and then you put all you put things on credit card. So if you dig in, a lot of people could afford to rent an apartment. They just can't afford it with the lifestyle they try to live. $500 car payment, which is these days shockingly nothing. It's pretty low, actually.
I know nothing about car payments.
I know.
Man.
You're a cash and carry guy. It's pretty wild. Well, I will inform you, Eric. So when I got married 10 years ago, my car payment was $228 a month, and that was for a brand new 2012 Honda Accord that I put $8,000 down to buy, fully loaded EXL model. People, come on, I'm high class.
Here we go.
And $228 a month, right? I will tell you now. Well, it's probably changed in the last 2 years since we last got cars. But I will tell you now, it is. We even looked at like not going with Mercedes in that route and going with like a Kia, whatever that SUV. I forget the name of it is, but cool looking SUV.
Kia stepped up.
It was like $850 a month for that, and I'm like, I am not paying $850 a month for a Kia. And then we test drove it, and I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing a Kia, because like I'm one of these guys. This doesn't sound snobbish, but like, I'll drive my Mercedes and I'll be like, it's just a car, But you get used to it, right? You step in a Kia, you're like, look straight from the outside. You start driving, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is not great car, not the same thing, not the same thing at all, So, and again, I'm a Honda guy. I would still go back to a Honda, but now I'm like, there's definitely a difference when you step up. But those luxury cars, you see people driving the Mercedes and BMWs and stuff. They're paying $1,200 to $2,000 a month in a lease payment, guaranteed, and on up from there. So I mean, hey, if you can do it, God bless them. For me, unfortunately, it's a business. It's for business and it's a business write off. But in general, we're not talking about luxury cars. Car payments have just gone through the roof.
Well, I just and my business mind, I think about you just said $1,200, right?
Yeah.
Like if I dedicated $1,200 to let's say the ADU that I'm building, right?
Yeah.
I'm using a HELOC to build it, right? And the monthly payment on the HELOC is going to be somewhere between $800 and $1,200 a month, depending on the interest, because they're
fluctuates. Yeah,
correct.
Please, Fed, stop raising the rates so our HELOCs will stop adjusting.
We'll be all right. We'll be okay.
Stop it.
But I just think like, okay, when I spend $1,200 a month on a car payment, or if I spend $1,200 a month by converting my garage into a nice living space for somebody that can't afford a home or doesn't want to own a home, right? And I could create a space like that where they would pay $2,500 a month, right? Well, then I just use that $1,200 a month payment to create $2,500
and a space for somebody,
and a really nice space for somebody. And so what that does is it puts $1,000 in my pocket every month. So when I don't know if that way of thinking is what got me from having absolutely nothing, right, to doing all right, and more than anything, I think on a path where I'm on a better trajectory in life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I circle it back to people and them saying, I can't do this, I can't do that. you can, but you just have to change the way you think. And
At all levels, for sure. Yeah.
Somebody making minimum wage who thinks that way
Yeah.
is undoubtedly going to own
Yeah.
a home and much more.
Well,
much,
and
much,
also
much,
we live
much,
in
much more.
some of what I was saying is like we live in a society with too many things. There's too many things that are proliferated now that like demand our time and our money, right? It's like your phone is basically it's like a Target handheld basically. I mean, it's like every retailer, you just click of an app and they'll remind you when you need to buy something that you didn't even know you needed to buy, right? So the competition level for our money and the ease with which we can spend it, right? It's like you're on Instagram scrolling, you're like, oh, wow, the new Jackie Robinson Dodger hat, Brooklyn model came out.
Had to be baseball related.
$43.99. I've got to have that. And guess what? It's only going to be like a limited time. So I have to buy it.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I can afford that. But like, just the constant bombardment, and like, you and I do pretty well. Respectively, it's like it's easy for us to like overspend in a sense, and like we're going to be able to recover most likely. I think that's the real challenge. Is I'm not saying it's wise. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, but I'm saying for people that are like they're on the margins with their income and the income, there's so little margin for error, as far as them overspending, and that's how it can quickly spiral into credit cards. I mean, what's crazy is I love my credit cards because I think last year I made nearly like $9,000 from my credit cards. Like using credit cards paid me $9,000. You know what I mean? Buying stuff for the business, whatever, all the points, I have high credit score, all that. So it's like I put very few things on my debit card because my credit cards, they pay me.
But you got to that point because of the way that you think.
Sure.
Right.
And discipline.
Not because you started with money or started with no money. It's because you think that way now, right?
I've never in my life, and I'm going to turn 42, never have I ever put something on a credit card that I didn't pay off the full balance the next month. Ever. Never happened at all. So basically from the very beginning, that we're talking when I had a $500 credit card limit when I first opened it up, and I put 120 on there, and I'm like, oh man, damn, $220, to now, thousands of dollars, and it pays you. But that's the crazy part about credit cards is they can be used for good, right? It's a nice way to track all my expenses as well because it'll categorize it, right? But for somebody who's using it because they're overspending or they're not making enough, they can be devastating, right? Because the compound interest on those things.
And I've been there. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I've totally been there. Yeah. I've maxed out credit cards. I've been in collections. I mean, one of the, regrets, and I don't know if it's a regret or whatever, but I remember I was young and I was, just trying to make it, without really knowing. And I remember my mom, helped me out with a credit card, and I messed that up too. You know what I mean?
She like paid off a balance for you, or
even worse, man.
Okay.
But I messed that up too. You know what I mean? And I was in collections, and I voluntary repoed a car. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to do BK. I was like, okay, I made this mess. I'm not gonna do a BK. I'm gonna find a way to pay these people back. Right? I'm gonna. So
which good on you. Most people would probably just be like, "Oh, I'll just file for bankruptcy,"
and that's okay too. What I'm saying is, but at some point, the way that I think, it changed, right? But it changed after I made just a mess of
which
my
happens,
finances and all of that stuff, man. So, but it some people from the start, they're very smart about it. They get it. They understand it. I didn't, man. I just blew it, man.
Yeah.
I blew it. But from there, I learned. And then when I married Andrea, I just got very, very serious. And then I started watching, I obsessed over Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
And that's all I would watch. I'd wake up and I'd watch Dave Ramsey, and before bed, I'd watch Dave Ramsey, and that's how it started, man. In that little apartment with me and Andrea, just paying off her school loans and paying off credit cards and stuff like that. And we weren't making a lot of money, and we had the baby, and within a year, we had everything paid off. And then we're like, okay, let's buy a house. And she's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, man, let's buy a house. And I was like, we have no debt. Our credit is back. Like,
Yeah.
That's it. So it just kind of.
So you made some serious like committed decisions and then you stuck with it. It sounds like.
And I don't know why. There was something in there that that did
you
it.
were now married, right? And then eventually when you had your kid, did you have your kid when you were in the apartment?
Yes.
And then so you want to buy a home, right? But you also start manifesting things too. Like anybody who's, what I've learned is anybody who's progressed, or not even just like the problem is like you never have, the timing is never exactly right for anything in life. You never have all the information you need. And I'm talking like even a guy like Jeff Bezos. I guarantee you if he was here, he'd be like, yeah, you don't. So you do the best you can you try to get the best information you can. You do the best with the information you have, and you make your most tactical launch that you can make, right? And that's why I tell people, my clients, I'm like, look, I don't know anybody who's ever bought a house that didn't feel like they're kind of biting off more than they can chew. It kind of is just that way.
Oh yeah.
Just even the unknown of it, like, okay, you have money in your bank account for a down payment, but like, man, it's been sitting there for like a year and a half, and now you're like, it's all gonna go away, and it's gonna like, it's just kind of like it just feels different, right? And but I don't know anybody who, well, and I don't really have any friends from like the '08 collapse, but like I don't know anybody who's bought a house soundly, like that had business buying that house and held on to it long term that's regretted it. You know what I mean? Right. Anybody I've ever talked to that's older than me, the only regret they had is that they either didn't hold on to the properties that they did have at one point, or they didn't buy more of them.
Buy more.
And that's like for like, I'm talking like I've talked to some 70, 80, 90-year-olds. You know what I mean? So, you look at that and you say, anybody who's, could look back at life and say, wow, where I am today, I have a lot more. And that could be family, like getting married. Nobody knows for sure. You have an idea, but you're two human beings and life changes and you're growing, and then you add kids in and you add uncertainty, or you add illness, or there's a lot of things that can happen, right? But if you sit back paralyzed and never be like, oh, there's too many bad things that could happen. Well, then you'll never experience that, because most things in life worth having come with like, it's a little bit of a magic carpet jump. You just got to jump on it and hope it's, there to take you along, And I don't know. I learned that like every day, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, I could stress about the state of the market and where things are at, but there's always gonna be people that need
You got to get away from the complainers, man.
Yeah.
If and I hear you saying that as you said that, because we have 4 babies, right? And they're all
it's babies, a lot,
right?
Makes me nervous. Right. I don't know how you guys do it, but I respect you.
Nervous,
I respect you, bro.
It makes a lot of people nervous. My oldest is 6. The youngest is 8 months, and I probably got that wrong because I.
Round of applause for the Avalos family.
What I mean by that is you just ran off all those things, getting married, and I hear people complaining about being married, having kids, and I hear people have every time we meet somebody, they're like, just hang in there, just hang in there. I'm going, what do you mean just hang in there? We're having a good time.
Yeah.
We're having a great time, right? You can't own a home. What do you mean you can't own a home?
Sure.
Maybe not right now, but you can own a home if you want, right?
Yeah.
You can't live on one income. What do you mean you can't live on one income, right? Like you got to get those people away.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're your close friends or whatever, but
well, what they're saying is you can't live on one income if you're not willing to make adjustments. You know what I mean? Like that's what.
I really think some of these people think that it's not in LA. You can't live on. What do you mean you can't?
Yeah,
of course you can.
Right, but you have to make, for a lot of people, they would have to make adjustments, to their lifestyle.
100%.
So that's what they're really saying. It's like, I want to live on one income.
I don't want to give up,
but maintain my lifestyle and preferably increase my lifestyle.
I don't want to give up a $1,200 car.
Yeah, right? I want my Mercedes.
But you know what? Eventually, you get back to that. Like,
sure,
I love cars. I love cars. I would love a super expensive car. Can I do it right now? Not right now, is what I tell myself. Not right now, but
sure.
But it is gonna happen, right? I am gonna, drive a really cool 6'4" Impala. Just hooked up.
That'd be nice, man. No, you know what? It's perspective. It's so funny because now I'm gonna be 42 this year. It sounds really weird. I think we're roughly the same age.
I'm older.
You're older than me. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
So I can't claim the old man card, but I'm going to anyways. But like, I'm at the stage where now I have like 20-year-olds like emailing me or like, oh, hey, my cousin knows you and like, put me in contact with you because thinking about doing real estate, or I just graduated college or grad school and I don't know. And it's like, oh, damn, I'm that age now. They're like, some of these people think I'm somewhat successful. Shit, I better figure out what I need to tell them. No, and I just tell people, I said, look, and I also get worried because I feel like younger people are being so coddled mentally and emotionally. In other words, I think a lot of where you described it, you got to where you are because you faced some adversity. Some of it your own doing, some of it not.
But I was sheltered.
You were sheltered. Okay.
I was sheltered.
Okay.
100%.
Maybe that led to some of your adversity then.
I was super protected from the world, from problems, from all of that stuff because I was the youngest of 5 and my sisters were much older than me. So they were always, they weren't letting me fall on my face.
So they had experienced life ahead of you. So they kind of
100%. And they would, so I was, and that's why, again, I have faith in the people that even though, yes, maybe we are, overdoing it with our kids, not allowing them to experience some things on their own, right? All relative, because you can't let a 6-year-old, learn to drive a car. Right? But what I'm saying is, I think that at some point, a lot of those people that, I hear people talking smack about, millennials and this and that. Nah, man, some of those people are going to do great things.
For sure.
It's just going to take them longer, like it took me longer,
Yeah.
right? Than somebody who wasn't so coddled.
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't so overprotected the way that I was.
Sure.
They'll get there faster. Yeah. But they will. I have faith, man.
Yeah.
A lot of those folks.
I think interestingly enough, a lot of the data is showing though that there is there's a more of a general like sanitization of the previous generation. Like it's like cliche. Every generation like looks at the younger generation like, oh, these people, these young kids don't know what I'm about it. And they're like, screw you, boomer, screw you.
Whenever I'm doing it, I think, oh, you know what? I'm doing it right now.
But there is data like these kids graduating college and they have these identity crises because. And I'm not talking gender. I'm talking. They have these. We won't even get on. We won't even get on that. They have these identity crises because I think when I was in college in the early 2000s, I saw the beginning of this. I think they're told they're the best. They can do anything they want. Then they go to college and they graduate and they're told on the stage at their graduation that you're going to change the world, and they think that means next month. Or tomorrow in their next job. So they get into these companies and they think, why am I getting somebody else's coffee? Why am I the one doing the printer sheets? I should be the decision maker. I know more than Larry, who's 55, who's the senior VP. I think there's a lot of that mindset. And by the way, I want to have my summers in Paris and I want to have a BMW and I want to have, a lot of these things. And what they don't realize is, is that those things take time, right?
Correct.
Like you may know how to code and Larry doesn't, but you've never sat down and closed a deal with a client, so you really don't know shit, actually. Like, you could code something for Larry, who's a senior VP, who's 55, but Larry's been meeting with people and clients across the globe for the last 25 years in his role. So he knows actually more than you do, right? In fact, you probably can't even give a talk in front of people because you're always on a screen looking at yourself and talking to yourself, right? So, like, it's just funny to me how, like, again, this is somewhat of its data that I look up. Some of it's just anecdotal. My experience with a lot of teenagers is the interpersonal communication skills is like plummeted down a lot. And I think my anecdote is a lot of that is you have less. When I was a teenager, this went back when I was a kid. No, but when I was a teenager, we're talking, dude, it's a long time ago now. It's hard to think that way. But like in the 90s, we didn't have cell phones. We weren't texting each other, but we'd like go run over to each other's homes across the neighborhood. We'd walk a mile to our junior high and we'd play football. Tackle football for 4 hours on a field with no adult supervision, right? And you learn something in that process. Sometimes there were fights, sometimes there were arguments, but as a community, you had to learn how to work that out. Now, we weren't thinking of it that way. It was kind of like Lord of the Flies a little bit. Like you figured it out yourself. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of kids lack that type of like, hey, figure it out for yourself. And sometimes you're going to get knocked in the head, and then you got to figure out how not to get knocked in the head, And there's less and less of that, I think, happening in our society.
But they are figuring some things out that will be necessary,
Sure.
in 10 years from now, that maybe are I and I try, and I am judgmental, but I try not to be, because some of the things, some of the skill that we developed in those sandlot days,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think will be obsolete 10, 20 years from now. Maybe not 10, but 20 years from now. I think some of the skills that we developed in those sandlot days, playing with people and meeting people in person, I don't think they will be as useful 20 years from now as they were for us when we went into business.
Interesting.
Right? I think, and so when I catch myself being judgmental, and I think, but you know what? It's going to be different. It's going to be different. And they're going to need those skills that they're acquiring through some of the, the tech that we look at and go, oh, that's why they can't relate to people. Well, it'll be different.
Sure, it'll be different. But I guess I'm betting on the fact that as long as there's human beings that have flesh and blood, people are going to have to face-to-face interrelate. And it could even be through Zoom, face-to-face on Zoom. Because you hear a lot, too, about people who are like, oh, Zoom's great. But then, like, I had 300 people in my presentation, and, like, I could tell that only, like, 10% were actually engaged.
Right now.
You know what I mean? Right now. We don't know what it'll be in 20 years from now for sure. We don't know. Might be a virtual hologram or something like that,
Well, I mean, I don't know. It might be, but I think that some of that, I have to allow my kids to hone that skill, right? And going back to coddling and stuff like that, if there's one thing that being a parent has taught me and continues to teach me, is that balance between encouragement and discipline.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Encouragement and discipline. And I think if I become a tyrant in the way that I parent, I'm gonna lean too far on one side, right? And maybe be too heavy-handed and not enough praise and encouragement, right? Because you absolutely need that. And kids need a lot of it. Absolutely. But if you overdo it, then yes, you're setting you're potentially setting your kid up to go out into a world that is going to be, a little bit rough on them if they don't know how to, just if all they ever heard was one thing, right? You're great, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
It's like they have to know that at times they're not so great, and that's okay, right? Because when you're not so great, what do? You work to get better.
Yeah.
Right.
But like even my son, he's at the stage now where, like, if I am firm with him, or like say I like grab him on the shoulder, like, hey, I'm talking to you, buddy. He'll, look at me like, and then he'll go to mom and be like, Mom, dad touched me, and I'll be like, and he, he's innocent about it, but like, and then luckily my wife will be like, don't you ever say that about your dad, and she corrects him. She's like, what did he do? Oh, he grabbed you. So it's like he knows, and he'll do the same thing, and then he'll be like, Mommy spanked me, or mommy was mean to me, and it's like, well, what'd she do? Oh, well, I wanted to eat the whole piece of pawn, and she only gave me half. It's like, well, yeah, you can't have the whole piece of pawn, and he gets really angry that, like, wait, you're agreeing with her? You're not siding with me, So I just think, like, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to idealize the past, but I do think there's a lack of, like, I think younger people, like it's a lot of it's like feelings based and how I feel. And dude, at the end of the day, some of it is like, well, look at these companies. You have workers complaining that, like, was it Amazon or Disney, or both of them wanted employees that are like, on this date, you're going to come back to the office 3 days a week, and one of them was 4 days a week, right? Which, okay, they could have said you're coming in 5 days a week, and that's that. Forget it. We're going back to pre-COVID now, right? So they were throwing them an olive branch, and these employers are like mutiny, like, no, how dare you? And I get it, because some of them probably set up, there's all these news stories, like some of them have set up their life, like they moved to Idaho. Like, what do you mean I got to come back to the office in San Francisco 3 days a week? I live in freaking Boise, Idaho now, And they just never thought they were going to have to go back or whatever, So there's all these things where it's like, hey, like sometimes you just don't get the free food and the beanbag to sit on while you're at work. Sometimes work is work, and it's hard, and it's not fair, and you have to do things that you don't want to do and that you don't like, and you have to like meet and get along. You have to get along with people or be cordial with people that aren't necessarily your favorite too, And so you don't get to customize in our customizing world. You don't get to customize everything and curate everything that you experience on a daily basis.
That doesn't mean you can't go after what you want, though, right?
100%.
Like, I don't want my kids growing up thinking that, just because you can't have, what you want right now, it doesn't mean that you won't get it in the future, right? Like,
Correct.
There's a scene in a movie that I think it's Gladiator, and Russell Crowe asks his assistant or his slave or whatever. He says, how do you do it? How do you do it? How and the guy goes, well, I think he says, I forget what he says, but basically he says, I do what I have to right now so that I can do what I want later on.
Sure.
Right. And so hopefully, I can instill some of that in my kids. And listen, man, I'm going to screw my kids up somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm going to mess them up. And there's some things that are going to go wrong there because,
and some will be them. Some will just be them. It's not your fault. You know what I mean? Like we try to place blame on parents and stuff. Some of it is like, you don't get to pick your kids. Like I'm sure you have 4 kids. They probably all have unique personalities. I mean, you probably already see it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think same mom, same dad, they're going to be very similar. They probably have some similarities and mannerisms, but I'm sure the individual.
Well, I hope they come out more like their mom than they do
there
me.
You go.
Man. That's for sure.
Smart guy. I'll throw it out there too. This is a little random. I have a good buddy of mine, and I'll keep this generic and anonymous. If he watches this and his wife, I love you guys so much. I'm just using this as an example, and I respect any decision you make for your family and your kid. But so their first kid. So this was my college roommate, the husband, and so they had their first kid right when they graduated college, and got married, and now he's calling me. He's like, hey Sam, my kid's gonna go overseas to school. It's gonna be X amount a year. And, and I know they love their oldest son, and they want him, but it's going to be probably close to $300,000. It sounds like $250,000-$300,000 for the 4-year program. And I'm thinking, and I'm thinking to myself as a businessman, so so he's talking about what are ways we could raise funds. I'm like, bro, I sell real estate. I have no clue. I don't know. Start an OnlyFans.
No,
I'm just joking, man. Well, his wouldn't do very good, but here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking to myself, I get it. You don't want to disappoint your son, but so I think about, man, okay, if my son was not 4 and he was 18 and about to be going to college, or college age, I should say, I don't think I would pay $80,000 a year for him to go off to wherever. I think I would propose. There's much more. First of all, what is it? Do you want to what's your in other words, people just go to college. It'll be good for you. You'll find yourself. Well, it's too expensive now to just be self-discovery tool. Okay, at least in my opinion. Not that it's not a good option for self-discovery if you're living on campus. I'm all about traveling abroad. I think it's a great thing. But if we're talking about $300,000, that's a lot of coin. What's the return on investment, right? It's self-discovery can't be enough. So what's the end goal? What profession, what business, what do you want to do long term? Ideally, are you good at communicating in sales? Are you more of a doer, or more of a thinker, engineer? What are you into? And let's reverse engineer and think through what are the logical steps. So if you do this $300,000 bachelor's degree program, are you gonna have to do a master's degree? Are you gonna have to do a PhD? What is it you're gonna have to do? And if it's you just want to go and be educated and stuff, well, you can. How about this? You can go locally for a fraction of the cost. And then you can do a study abroad for a semester or something like that, right? So again, a lot of people, they don't want to disappoint their kids.
Did you tell him that?
Not directly. If he watches this,
why not, man?
No,
I think that
he
saying, hey, look,
yeah.
there are other options.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was, and say, hey, look, if it were me,
yeah,
right?
I did tell him that. So 2 months ago or so, or maybe longer than that, before he had made the decision, the child had made the decision they're going to go to overseas to Europe for college. I told him, I said, hey, look, I said, if this is my son, I would just look at more affordable in-state options. And even those are not always super affordable, but usually you get an in-state tuition option, right? That's at least better than the abroad option. And then I said, I would have him do a study abroad, or do 2 years here at a community college, and then look at maybe doing 2 years abroad at another university. But more and more, and again, I used to work in higher education, bro. I'm all for higher education, but more and more, it the value proposition is not what it used to be as far as like a ticket to become employed, because there's so many schools where they'll just, you pay to get a degree, basically, university fee. Yeah, there's online programs. There's not a lot of exclusivity around it. And so much of it is merited on the individual. Like, yes, if you go to Harvard or Yale and you're in the business school, there's a higher likelihood you're going to run with people that are from high net worth families that are you'll get networked, right? Versus if you go to Cal State Northridge, right? But you can get a similar education at Cal State Northridge that you could get at Harvard. You might have to work for it, be a little more intentional about it, but you're not going to get the same networking. But again,
you would know more about that than I do, man. So I know nothing about that.
The cost is
space,
But when you hear $300,000 for a bachelor's degree,
but I do know about that. Okay, if my kid came to me and said, "Hey," if my kid came to me right now with the way I think right now, and they said, "Hey, I want to do this $300,000 program," I would go, "Okay. What are you going to end up with after that? If you do accomplish it, right?
What's the roadmap?
What are you going to end up with, right?
Yeah.
And then if we can come up with something that makes sense to to spend that $300,000, I would say, okay. And then we would put a plan together that says, okay, I don't know that I would cover it all, right? But yeah, and it probably started when I was in school, man. I remember that the pressure, where are you going to go? Where are you going to, by the way, CSUN's a really good school, man.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I don't know if what you learn is comparable than what you would learn at a,
I think they have the same access to the same information.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe the professors at Harvard and Yale are more published and more esteemed. There's more funding there, obviously. Right. Harvard has a $50 billion endowment. But again,
I would look at it. But in what you're just saying right now, I think one of the most valuable things that we can bring into our lives, or you talk about adding value, right? Like to me, in hearing you say all of that, I think that having friends or people around you that are gonna really speak their truth, right? And say, hey, look, here's how I feel. Yeah. Even though it's not necessarily what you want to hear. Like, sure. That's why I said, why didn't you tell them, man?
Yeah. And I did.
People in our lives, right? Because you can't buy that at a university. You can't buy having a friend like Sam who's gonna bounce an idea off you that doesn't jive with what you want him to say, but maybe gives you another perspective that makes you go, wow. Well, where are you going to buy that?
Yeah.
Where are you going to buy that?
And I'm somebody, I have a 4-year-old and I have one child, and I've already thought about the whole college question, talked about it with my wife. And I've basically come to the conclusion that like today, like I honestly don't know. I mean, and like, unfortunately our universities, and it saddens me to say this, have become more ideological think tanks in a lot of ways than institutions of higher thinking, and where they used to be, where you were able.
Bro, you're getting into these like $10 words that I don't even know how to break down. You know what I mean?
No, just like
ideological.
In other words, they're not places of open inquiry like they used to be, where like
where you challenge each other's
ideas and be presented. And some of that goes
back
back to the environment I'm talking about. We're coddling, where more and more kids are like, you probably aren't familiar with all this, but like safe spaces and these trigger warnings and things like that, where it's like you need to be preemptively warned that something may offend you about what somebody's about to say, right? I'll keep this brief because we'll wrap it up here. But there was a federal judge that was a Trump-appointed federal judge that was invited by Stanford University School of Law to come give a lecture of some sort. So the guy's presumably got a JD. He's a federal judge, but he was appointed by Trump. Stanford invited him to their law school to give a lecture. So a group of students and activists came and shouted him down. And the dean of Stanford Law, the school that invited this guy in the first place, came in and sided with the protesters and basically started saying like, well, don't you feel that the topics that you're discussing have the potential to offend or hurt people? And he's like, I don't know, because they're just ideas. I mean, I guess any idea could in theory offend somebody, which is true. And, her whole point was essentially like trying to protect students from hearing something that they may not understand, they may not like, or they may disagree with. And I'm like, wow, like that's a really weird place to be at. Like, how can you have a thinking, growing, learning environment if that notion is that things that are of controversy can't be presented. You know what I mean? It's a very, and have an open dialogue about them, right? There's a very, and this guy's a federal judge too. It's not like he's just some random podcaster or something, you know, like some guy that's like, you know, whole business model is controversy. He's a sitting federal judge. You know what I mean? So, you know, but probably some of them, because he was appointed by Trump, that probably sent them off. I'm guessing. I don't know all the details. I just, you know, there's a news story on it. But, you know, so the universities, and the thing is, I've got 15 more years to my son, 14 more years, which I know will go by fast. But like thinking about now, I don't even know. Honestly, higher education might collapse by then. I don't know if that's sustainable. We won't go into all that because the financing and funding of it, I just don't think it's sustainable, to be honest with you. But we'll see. And it's curious that student federal loans are the only loan. They're the only loans that you can't declare bankruptcy on. Ironically,
That's wild.
right? So it's basically indentured servant. It's an indentured servant. Like, you know, you may not be able to pay them back, but they will stick with you and they will follow you until you go to the grave. Maybe beyond. I don't know. Thank God mine are almost all paid off. I paid them. Luckily, low interest rates. I mean, sometimes just by luck, like I think mine are like 2%. Now they're like 6, 7, 8%, something like that. You know, for students.
Remember, that was our big mission when we first got married. Was that Andrea still had some student loans or whatever, and that was it.
Yeah, I paid like 90% off, but you know, I have such a low payment, and just, you know, make the payment. But
they can be paid. Listen, man,
they can be paid off. But I didn't have like $200,000 in loans. Some of these kids coming out today with like an English degree, they got $150,000 in debt. So they have a $1,000 a month payment before they even get their first job, and they got an English degree. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you gonna do? You know, nobody's hiring you just because you got an English degree.
Like, you know, your credentials to become a teacher are so expensive. All right, I'm like, your credentials to be a social worker, so expensive.
And the pay is, for the most part, is not commensurate.
Well, you know, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on here? But you know, hopefully, as a parent, I can, you know, kind of, you know, guide my kid. Hey, you want to do that for a living? Here's what it's going to pay, but your education is going to cost this much. Yeah. Right. Like, you sure, just to get them to think in those terms, this is what it's going to cost. And maybe they still go through with it because they'll be 18. They make their own decision. They take their own loans or whatever. Maybe they still go through with it, but at least after it blows up on them, I'm being a jerk here, but after it blows up on them, you know, and if I'm not around, they'll think back on it and go, you know what?
Dad was right.
That was a valuable lesson right there, right? And then they still have time to recover from it, man.
Sure.
You know, they still have.
You know, and that's the thing. Before you say, oh, you're young, you're in your 20s, you'll have time to recover. But like now the numbers, the numbers are mind-blowing. It makes me wonder if it's $300,000 or $250,000 for a bachelor's degree now, 15 years, what's going to be $500,000? You know what I mean? So, you know, and we can end on this. And my plan is my son will he will be a first round draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft. Preferably to the Dodgers. If you're out there, Dodgers, my son will be ready to be either a starting pitcher or a middle infielder for you.
There you have it, man. That sounds like a solid plan.
And then,
dude.
you know,
he could do. Odds are in your favor.
He could do. They are. I bend the odds. You don't know that about me, Eric? I bend the odds. You didn't see the batting cage I have in the backyard? Oh, I didn't. This boy, I'm like, hey, you want to go do some hitting? No, Dad, it's cool. I'm like, no, bucket of balls. We got to go hit a bucket of balls, buddy.
Jeez, man. Hard.
No, but it's fun. Yeah, we had him playing t-ball when he was 2. But I'm gonna do everything in my power, unless he absolutely like at 8 or 9's like, I hate baseball. I'll be like, all right, well, here's a guitar. Here's a couple of videos of Kurt Cobain. Try to figure out how to be really cool and write songs and make some money that way. You got to figure something out. No, but I'll probably have him get his real estate license. You know, I mean, if that's still around, which I think it will.
I'm just laughing around because I hear you saying I'll probably have him. I'm like, vaya con Dios with that. You know what I mean? Good luck with all that. I'll have him do this. You know what I mean? Like, I try not to use those words because.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't know for sure, but I'm the type of person I will do my best to ensure his success. Right. And so my goal is to make what Daddy does interesting enough to where he wants to be a part of it. Now, that could not happen.
Hopefully we instill certain values into our kids, right? And then even if they go away from it for a while, they circle back to it. You know,
my thing is you gotta be doing something. It's like, hey, you want to go be an art major? Cool. Get your real estate license. Learn sales. Learn how to deal with people while you're getting your bachelor's degree in art. You're not going to just get a bachelor's degree in art and underwater basket weaving and then work at McDonald's when you're done. Okay.
Well, and the reason why you're telling him to do that, I think, is something that he'll look back on in time and go, "This is why my dad was telling me that."
Right.
And that's what, you know, that scene
Yeah.
in The Lion King where he says, "Remember who you are."
Yeah.
Those are the moments
and-
that you look back on as an adult and go, you know, now I understand what my dad was telling me, right?
Yeah.
Remember who you are, those values that are in there, right? And so,
Well, and I didn't grow up with a dad, so I didn't have any dad telling. So everything I've done, I mean, I have my grandfather who was key, but everything I've done for them, but he was not a businessman. He didn't go to college. You know, the idea of starting a business, selling real estate, and luckily he was alive for like the first few years of my real estate career when I first started. So I remember like bringing home my first commission check, and I showed it to him, and he's like, "Huh?" He's like, is this for like, you know, a year? I'm like, no, this is for like this week. Next week's going to be even better. He was just like,
That's
it was like mind boggling for him.
couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it at all.
believe
You know, I think there was one month where I sold like 9 homes in a month, and it was like, you know, it was like well over $100,000 a month. And, which, you know, 8 years ago was like, I mean, if I made $100,000 in a year, I would have been fired up. You know what I mean?
Well, don't get it twisted. $100,000 in a month is a
It's a good month. That's a good month.
chunk of cabbage,
a good month.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So, but I remember like he just, you know, he was like 97 at the time, you know, and just like, but he was all there, right, mentally. And he was just like, all right, you made a good decision. Like, wow, okay, all right, good, you know. And so that was cool for him to see. But again, he would not be the person that would give me, other than his values and character and just observing how he conducted himself with people and relationships. But, you know, again, for me, a lot of my education was looking at, I grew up in Burbank with a lot of friends who had means and parents were business owners. So I just saw like, oh, if you want to have a house on the hill, you want to have a pool, you want to have a jacuzzi, you want to go on vacations, you want to have nice cars, you got to own a business. You got to do something. Very few people are going to work in paycheck jobs, right? I mean, maybe if they get to a VP or a high executive level, you make $300,000-400,000 or more a year, stock options, this, that, the other. But those positions, you got to almost sell your soul to get those positions.
yeah, they're not very happy people, and
No.
But
And you're owned.
I hope I'm not offending anybody right here, but
No, you're owned by the company though. You really are, you know?
yeah. I mean, you do have to, you know, just jeopardize a big piece of who you are to accomplish those things within a company.
Yeah.
I think,
And God bless people that do. I mean, again, every job, every profession, every career, there's trade-offs. There's things you gain and things you lose, right? There's positives and negatives.
Right.
But I just remember, like, you know, like you're saying, like having a dad. Hopefully for our kids, like we lay a blueprint and then invite them. At least my son, I hope that he's a little curious about what I do. And I think part of that is when you have a dad that's involved in your life and you have a dad that like invites you into what they do. I think most kids, because they love this, they love their dad. Like, yeah, I want to learn this. I want to do that. You know?
yeah, brother. And I go back to, you know, more than, you know, my kids being curious about what I do. I hope the curiosity is, you know, why I do those things.
Sure.
Right.
The why,
not what I do, but why I decided to, you know, go all in on a commission only gig and why I did those things. Right. I think is where the important things are going to come from. Right. And again, I keep telling myself, you're not going to make them who you want them to be. You're going to instill certain values that they can fall back on, that can center them when things get crazy in their life, but they're going to be whoever they want to be.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
well, it's kind of like I'm going to train you how I do things. I'm going to teach you how I do things, how I see the world, how I see things. And then you're going to figure out how you apply that to your own life.
100%.
And then it may mean that you end up doing very similar or very same things I do, or it may mean you do something completely different, but you have a blueprint, you have a roadmap.
You can always fall
for how to do those
yeah.
things, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a key thing. And like, so for somebody that grew up without a dad, even though I had my grandfather, but like it's not the same as like having your dad, right? I'm very conscious about like being very involved with my son, telling him every day, multiple times, probably soon he's gonna be like, stop telling me you love me, Dad. But like every day telling him I love him, you know, that I'm proud to be his dad. I'm thankful that he's my son, you know, that he's a gift from God. I speak those things to him, you know, and like even now he's like 3 and he doesn't understand, you know, but he is hearing it, you know what I mean? And hopefully I pray that I never stop doing that, you know, and my wife as well, she's awesome in that regard. And you know, my hope is that, you know, my grandfather in the best capacity he could gave me what he could. And then I ran with that, but like, I really didn't have a blueprint. I had to just kind of bootstrap it and figure it out, you know? And for me, that's why
he gave you confidence, man. I mean, you know, that's all I want. is my kids to have confidence, right?
You have to have that to start to step out. You have to have
and
that.
to think on their own. If they
Sure.
can have those two things, right? If they can, have confidence and think on their own, whatever they choose to do, they choose to do it. You know what I mean? They'll always have that to fall back on, man.
We'll wrap it up here, man. This is the closing music here. Hey, everybody out there. Thanks for watching Terra Firma with Sam Anders. Eric Avalos, thank you for joining. Everybody be blessed. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on next week.